March 18th. The crowd that needed challenging. Luke chapter 14, verses 25 to 33. Now great crowds accompanied Jesus, and he turned and said to them, If anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, deciding to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, This man began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king going out to encounter another king in war will not sit down first and deliberate whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20,000? And if not, while the other is yet a great way off, he sends a delegation and asks for terms of peace. So therefore, any one of you who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple. I think I heard sermons on these verses at least once a year when I was a teenager, and they appeared in many of the books I read, whether they were biographies of Christian heroes or books on teaching on the Christian life. Taking up the cross, counting the cost, making sacrifices, being willing to suffer, these were frequently repeated themes. When I left high school, one of the few openly Christian teachers gave me Dietrich Bonhoeffer's famous book, The Cost of Discipleship. Who could forget its most famous sentence? When Jesus calls a man, he bids him come and die. But I can't remember when I last heard a sermon on chapter 14, verses 25 to 33. Books on the cost of discipleship appear infrequently, perhaps once in a blue moon. At the same time, as the years have passed, only a minority of books have focused on the meaning of the cross for the Lord Jesus, or its significance for us. Do you think, perhaps, that these two things stand or fall together? There is certainly a lot of talk about discipleship, but not so much about the meaning of Jesus' death or about carrying the cross. There seems to be more emphasis on being taught than sacrificing, on doing rather than suffering, on knowing how to order your life better rather than on being willing to go anywhere and do anything for Christ. That, after all, is at first glance, and maybe at 10th glance too, a more attractive message. It is likely to draw more people into the Christian crowd. At this point on the road to Jerusalem, Jesus himself was being followed by great crowds, at times numbering thousands. Chapter 12, verse 1. We tend to be much more impressed by crowds than Jesus was. He made it clear that his focus was not on the number of his followers, but on whether that number followed him without reservation. In fact, he explains the sine qua non, the essential condition for being a Christian. Without this, a person cannot be my disciple. Chapter 14, verse 26, 27, and 33. The principle he lays down is this: following him must have absolute priority in your life. In fact, if you don't hate father and mother, wife and children, and your own life, you cannot be his disciple. Notice that Jesus isn't saying that without this radical commitment you can still be a decent but not really great disciple. He's saying you can't be a disciple at all. And if you have heard people say that hate here simply means love less, forget it. It is much more radical than that. When Jesus is saying that by comparison with your devotion to him, all other loves must seem like hate, and that includes your natural love for yourself, he is calling us to die to everything we count dear in our lives. This is why he went on to talk about taking up the cross and following him. After his death, those words must have come back to the disciples with overwhelming force. He was asking them to be willing to do what he would first do for them. If this is the case, no wonder we need to sit down and count the cost. Because unless I'm willing to have my whole life first deconstructed and then reconstructed by Jesus, I will never be his disciple. Once again, Jesus makes clear that following him, becoming a disciple, becoming a Christian, is an all or nothing business. Today's reflection. Have you given yourself to Jesus? Only if you have will you be able to give up anything for Jesus. How do we see Jesus demonstrating this same cross-shaped commitment to us? This devotional series is being produced with the kind permission of the Good Book Company. A link to the book To Seek and to Save by Sinclair Ferguson can be found in the description below.